In the Islamic teachings, and also Fethullah Gülen highlights about this concept. He says that intentions are beyond the actions. Intentions are very important. And as engineers, engineers need to know that what they are doing will have a significant influence on the society, on the nature, the way we live. So first, I mean, political pressure on engineers doesn't justify that they can find out the secrets of God in the nature and use them in a terrible way. I mean, there is no justification for this. In the second perspective, as we talked about previously, this kind of ethical education is not maybe at this point enough for just for the engineers. We need to also train the decision makers. So we need to expand this concept. And people are responsible. If you have the knowledge and if you're using it in a negative way, I mean, you are responsible. The politicians are responsible. The people who are forcing engineers or scientists, they are responsible. And engineers who are becoming a toy for these people, and they are also responsible. And all of them needs to take their responsibility. Knowledge, and especially this kind of knowledge that we are talking with in our century with the scientific and engineering knowledge, really brings a significant amount of responsibility. And everyone should be aware of what kind of things they are doing to other people and the nature. So I think there is no excuse for engineers in terms of, hey, they have a political pressure. I think this is not an excuse. This shouldn't be an excuse for them.
I think if you want to influence the politicians, you just engineer their computers at the banks that will shut down, and they'll do anything you want. I think compassion is another virtue, but the virtue of reverence I was applying to a text. And the virtue of compassion, I think, is applied to people. One can't really, in the Islamic tradition, exist without the other, but they're different.
Just have a brief comment regarding the movements of renunciation and movements of activism. And I think we can see sort of throughout history, movements, for example, Buddhism began as a movement away from the world, as a community of celibate monks in the forest. And what struck me is that the activism that is promoted by Fethullah Gülen is very similar to the activism that is promoted in a very ancient Hindu text, the Bhagavad Gita, which is by actions that usually, get us into trouble, worldly actions. So I thought that this is a very interesting parallel. And he also, in the whole notion that to take oneself out of the society is a kind of escapism that will not benefit the society. But even within those traditions that have strong renunciate aspects, I mean, you have the Carmelite nuns who are purely renunciate, and then you have other factions within the Christian monastic system that are much more involved in activism in the world. So I just wanted to say that I think this is a very interesting parallel, activism and how to act in the world while kind of renouncing, in a sense, worldly action.
Yes, sir.
One of the problems that I think you face as you get older, especially if you have a science background, is reconciling it with a religious background. And I think one of the problems in the world is today that people with a heavy religious training have no science training, and usually the other way around. If you look at ethics, of course, they may have nothing to do with religion whatsoever. For example, the Ten Commandments, most of them are not religious at all. Most of them are what I would call sociological imperatives, and that is, if you don't go by them, your society will unravel. If we could somehow train scientists to appreciate more of the long-term benefits of, say, 5 of the 10 commandments, where they're nothing to do with religion, they're to do with this, what I say, social needs that we have to do, maybe some of this will be conquered. I think in so doing, you have to, I think, some of the Orthodox religions release some of their maybe too strong beliefs on myth and origin, and look at it more from a social perspective rather than a religious perspective.
Do you want to address that?
Yes, it's morality. That's very important. Is morality has something to do with religion, because you can be atheist and follow the Ten Commandments. So that's the question, really, if I understood it well.
Yes.
What would you answer that?
Well, certainly religion has everything to do with ethics. I mean, you just have to look at the Sermon on the Mount from my tradition, that it has everything to do with ethical action. I think that one of the difficulties with that is that it's so unreasonable, that the ethical action that it calls for is far beyond, in a sense, normal human capability. So it asks us to exceed ourselves. And how that relates to science, I'd have to think about that a great deal.